E-commerce continues to record strong growth in Europe and globally. European e-commerce grew by 13% in the last year.
Pero es que en esos meses del inicio de la pandemia pues vimos cosas nunca antes vistas, crecimientos del 300%, del 500%.
With the current growth of e-commerce, we will need to build an additional 28 to 30 million square meters in Europe by 2025.
So it's clearly a tough challenge for our supply chain to be able to cope with these rising demands.
In other words, consumers' shopping habits are swiftly changing, and consumers are becoming savvier about how and what they buy when the world is in a state of flux. What we basically see is we lose control and a lot of predictability. So our priorities as humans have shifted dramatically. So whilst our priorities shift, so do our behaviors. And what we witnessed is a change in the way we live, work, shop, connect across every industry.
El canal de e-commerce pues es donde más hemos visto cambios. Al final el gran reto del e-commerce pues era meterse en el sector de la alimentación y más en el de la alimentación de calidad. El jamón siempre ha costado mucho venderlo por internet.
Recent studies state that with the current growth of e-commerce, we will need to build an additional 28 to 30 million square meters in Europe by 2025. So that means that there's still a lot of work to be done.
E-commerce continues to record strong growth in Europe and globally. According to a report by Ecommerce Europe and Ecommerce, European e-commerce grew by 13% in the last year. While it is true that there is a trend towards stabilization of sales after the big pandemic peak, this business segment still has a lot of growth potential. As Prologis, we are seeing increased demand for logistics buildings to house e-commerce operations, particularly in urban environments in major European cities.
The growth in the number of online shoppers is inevitable and is stronger than ever given the new consumer needs and the expansion of digital channels, either as native e-commerce vehicles or as complementary sales channels that work in integration with physical retail under an omni-channel philosophy.
Some clients, their activity just froze with the COVID. They didn't sell, or their clients didn't sell, and goods were still arriving from the Far East, which resulted in extra space needed to buffer everything which was coming in and was not being sold. On the other hand, there was a lot of new demand due to COVID. COVID taught us not to depend so much on external markets, because suddenly the goods didn't come in. So that taught us to have emergency stocks, the importance of emergency stocks.
The global pandemic led to more people shopping online than ever before. So some trends that were predicted to happen just a few years from now have already become a reality today. Research indicates that more than half of people who have started using e-commerce for food and other products, for example, intend to continue with that habit forever.
We were in a situation during pandemic where we wanted everything straight away. We can't have the time to wait. And now we know that we have to be even more time efficient, especially when it comes to deliver products through e-commerce.
Jetzt nehmen wir als Preisvergleicher wahr, dass die Menschen große Sehnsucht haben, einen vernünftigen Einkauf zu machen und nicht mehr so spontan sich treiben lassen. Also der Rechercheanteil der Menschen hat zugenommen und dafür nutzen sie Tools wie unsere. Wir sollten uns mehr damit beschäftigen, bevor wir sofort sagen, ja, das muss ich sofort haben. In Wirklichkeit brauchen die meisten Menschen die Dinge gar nicht sofort. Ja, und das sehen wir auch bei uns in den Statistiken. Also schnelle Lieferung ist nur ein Kriterium von vielen. Der Preis ist auch weiterhin super wichtig. Und aber auch der Service der Shops, der erwartet wird.
Home has become, in a way, the center of the world for quite a long time, and it's still the center of the world when it comes to practicing sports.
El e-commerce ha sido una gran ayuda y ha supuesto un revulsivo para el sector. Es decir, hasta ahora, y sobre todo en el caso de Ribera del Duero, en el que tenemos bodegas muy pequeñas y centradas principalmente en el canal de hostelería, se encuentran que cuando se cierra ese canal no tienes ventas. Entonces, desde el Consejo Regulador creamos unos canales de venta que les han ayudado a vender el producto, a fidelizar.
Cuando hablamos en el mundo del retail entre el online y el brick and mortar, pues Carrefour Property es el brick and mortar, es el ladrillo. La tercera, inmobiliaria comercial. Somos la primera gestora de espacios comerciales del país también. Nosotros tenemos más de 600 millones de visitas en nuestras tiendas, solo en España. O sea, el Louvre, que es uno de los museos más visitados del mundo, tiene 13 millones al año. Nosotros tenemos 600 millones de visitas, de datos, de conocimiento del cliente.
What we try to introduce in the way we do e-commerce is to keep the relationship we have with people when they come into our stores and when we are face to face with them.
Muy poca gente se compra un televisor de más de 200 euros sin ir a verlo. Muy poca gente. O ya lo ha visto en funcionamiento en casa de un amigo, en su casa o en un lugar público, o lo ha visto en tienda. Cuando vas a una tienda tienes que darle eso al cliente, eso también empieza a ser experiencia, porque le puedes aportar algo que no puede ver online, el tacto de un tejido, por ejemplo. Para mí son totalmente complementarios, porque el online lo que nos está permitiendo, y los datos online que vienen del físico también, es conocer mucho más y adaptar mucho más la oferta y la experiencia.
Concepts such as sustainability are fundamental to the logistics industry, consumers and our business. Prologis has presented an ambitious plan for zero net emissions by 2040 across our value chains, as well as a goal of zero net emissions in our operations in Scope 1 and 2 by 2030. Our company is making a very strong commitment to the installation of EV charging points in our buildings.
Y trabajamos con la energía solar, y el año pasado invertimos más de 50 millones de euros en placas solares y estamos poniendo en todos nuestros centros este año también.
We have seen the global e-commerce industry take steps towards reducing its environmental footprint and contribute to the transition to a low carbon economy. Recent years have seen a heightened awareness from consumers of sustainability and a desire to make purchasing decisions that reduce their impact on the environment. Recycled, refurbished, second-hand goods have seen a significant growth in revenue, and the conscious consumer is here to stay.
Decathlon is really committed to move its business model to fit with the environmental concerns now. We are not only a retailer, we are a maker, a producer of our own products, and so the first level for us is to diminish the weight, the environmental weight of our products.
The great advantage of Prologis is that its proximity to large urban environments allows for a systematic reduction of road kilometers. In addition, data analytics will allow us to drastically reduce the carbon footprint of our facilities.
¿Qué va a pasar a partir de ahora? Pues que las bodegas han encontrado que el e-commerce es algo que viene para quedarse, igual que el delivery para la restauración, el e-commerce va a ser algo clave para el futuro de cualquier bodega y de cualquier negocio.
En el caso de Julián Martín, pues el éxito siempre ha venido dado porque hay una persona detrás. Siempre tiene que haber alguien ahí, no tiene que ser algo impersonal, y por eso la comunicación con el cliente de e-commerce cada vez es más importante.
People need big boxes, people need Excel warehouses. There's always a need of logistics. You need to have a place to do the distribution of your goods. So we are suddenly the market where everybody wants to be.
Also nahezu alle Unternehmen, die ich kenne im digitalen Bereich, haben auch schon bevor JetGTP sozusagen gehypt wurde, mit künstlicher Intelligenz gearbeitet. Das ist ein wichtiger Moment gewesen, das Ganze kritisch auch zu betrachten. Es gibt wie immer mit modernen Technologien Vorteile und Nachteile. Wenn wir uns konzentrieren als Menschheit, dass wir die Tools nur dafür einsetzen, wo sie uns nützen und wirklich darüber nachdenken, wo sie uns auch schaden, dann wird es eine prima Sache.
The way I see future between e-commerce and sustainability is the convergence in circular economy. I think a brighter future will be when we will use the product not only once, and when we'll be maybe in a situation where we rent the product rather than purchase it. And so this product will have multiple lives, will be recycled, will be reused by many people. The challenge for our supply chain will be maybe to have the opportunity to send it from one consumer to another one, especially if it is within a local area. So it could be where e-commerce and sustainability will cope together very well.